When I handed my wife a simple white envelope for our anniversary, she laughed and said it was probably another one of my cheap surprises. But when she opened it and saw the deed to the $15 million mansion she'd been obsessing over for years, her laughter died in her throat, and so did our marriage. My name is Harrison, and I learned the hard way that sometimes the most generous gesture can reveal the ugliest truth about someone you thought you knew. For 12 years, I believed I was married to my soulmate. Sarah had this infectious laugh, these warm brown eyes that crinkled when she smiled, and a way of making even our cramped downtown apartment feel like a palace. We'd met in college when we were both broke students surviving on ramen noodles and big dreams. Back then, she'd curl up against me in our twin bed, tracing patterns on my chest while talking about the future. "Someday, Harrison," she'd whisper, "we'll have everything we've ever wanted. A beautiful home, financial security, maybe even one of those gorgeous mansions overlooking the lake." I promised her we'd get there together. What I didn't realize was that she'd already decided I wasn't capable of keeping that promise. By our 10th anniversary, I'd built my architectural firm from nothing into one of the most respected practices in the city. The downtown office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, and my designs were featured in Architectural Digest twice that year. We'd moved from that tiny apartment to a beautiful 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, complete with the marble kitchen Sarah had always wanted. But it wasn't enough. "Look at this place," Sarah would say, scrolling through real estate listings on her phone during dinner. She'd stop at the same mansion every time, a breathtaking Mediterranean-style estate on 15 acres overlooking Crystal Lake. 23 rooms, infinity pool, private beach, guest house. The kind of property that graced the covers of luxury magazines. $15 million, she'd sigh, showing me the screen. "Can you imagine living somewhere like this?" I'd nod and smile, not mentioning that I'd already contacted the listing agent 3 times to inquire about the property. The owner was an elderly widow who wasn't quite ready to sell, but she'd promised to call me first when she was. "Maybe someday," I'd tell Sarah, watching her eyes light up with possibility. "Someday," she'd repeat, but her voice always carried this undertone of doubt, like she didn't really believe I could make it happen. The cracks in our marriage started showing around year 11. Sarah began working late more often, claiming her marketing job required longer hours. She'd come home smelling like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine, her hair perfectly styled despite supposedly spending 14 hours at the office. "You're being paranoid," she'd say when I asked about it. "I'm just working hard so we can afford the lifestyle we want." But the lifestyle she wanted kept getting more expensive. Designer handbags appeared in our closet, bags that cost more than most people's monthly rent. When I asked about them, she'd wave dismissively and say they were work necessities. "Image matters in my industry, Harrison. You wouldn't understand." That phrase became her go-to response whenever I questioned anything. "You wouldn't understand." Like my success in architecture somehow made me incapable of grasping basic concepts about money, relationships, or life in general. The worst part was how she'd started talking about me to her friends. I'd overhear phone conversations where she'd complain about my small-town mindset or my limited ambitions. According to Sarah, I was holding her back from the life she deserved. "He's sweet," I heard her tell her sister once, "but he just doesn't think big enough. I need someone with real vision, you know?" Real vision. As if designing award-winning buildings and running a successful business wasn't visionary enough. Our 12th anniversary was approaching, and I knew I had to do something dramatic. Not because our marriage was worth saving, I was starting to realize it wasn't, but because I needed to know exactly who I'd been married to all these years. That's when Mrs. Wellington called. "Mr. Harrison," the elderly woman's voice was warm over the phone, "I've made my decision about the Crystal Lake property. Are you still interested?" My heart pounded. "Absolutely. What are you asking? 14.8 million, she said. I know it's been listed higher, but you've been so patient and kind. I'd rather sell to someone who'll truly appreciate what this place means. I had the money. Between my firm's profits, smart investments, and a substantial inheritance from my grandfather that Sarah knew nothing about, I could afford it. Barely, but I could make it work. I'll take it, I said. The closing took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of secret meetings with lawyers, bank transfers, and paperwork. 3 weeks of watching Sarah complain about my lack of ambition while I literally purchased her dream home. She had no idea what was coming. The night before our anniversary, Sarah came home later than usual. Her lipstick was smudged, and she was wearing a new necklace I'd never seen before, delicate gold with diamonds that caught the hallway light. Where did that come from? I asked, nodding toward the jewelry. She touched it reflexively, her cheeks flushing. Oh, this? I bought it for myself. A little anniversary gift. With what money? Our joint account hasn't had any jewelry purchases. Her expression hardened. I have my own money, Harrison. I don't need to run every purchase by you. Own money. From the marketing job that supposedly paid $60,000 a year but somehow funded a lifestyle that cost twice that. Of course, I said calmly. Happy anniversary, darling. She kissed my cheek, and I smelled that familiar expensive cologne again. Not mine. Never mine. Happy anniversary, she murmured. I hope you have something special planned. Oh, I do, I assured her. Something very special. The next morning, I woke up early and drove to the florist. 2 dozen white roses, Sarah's favorites. Then to the bakery for her preferred chocolate croissants. Finally, to my lawyer's office to pick up the envelope that would change everything. The deed to 847, Crystal Lake Drive. All $14.8 million worth of Mediterranean paradise, transferred into Sarah's name as an anniversary gift. But here's what she didn't know, I'd also hired a private investigator. And the envelope contained more than just property documents. When I got home, Sarah was in the kitchen wearing her silk robe, scrolling through her phone with that familiar dissatisfied expression. There's my beautiful wife, I said, setting the roses on the counter. She looked up, startled. Oh. The flowers are lovely, Harrison. Thank you. No excitement. No genuine smile. Just polite acknowledgement, like I was a delivery person who'd brought something she'd ordered. I have something else for you, I said, pulling out the white envelope. Your real anniversary gift. Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly. She'd been expecting jewelry, probably. Something expensive and flashy that she could show off to her friends. Another envelope? She laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. What is it this time? A gift certificate? A romantic dinner reservation at that little Italian place you love? Her tone made it clear that neither option would be acceptable. The Italian place where we'd had our first date was apparently beneath her now. Just open it, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. She tore open the envelope carelessly, expecting disappointment. The legal documents unfolded in her hands, and I watched her expression change as she read the header. Property deed. She began, then stopped. Her eyes widened as she read the address. Crystal Lake Drive. Harrison, this is the mansion, I finished. Your dream house. 15 acres, 23 rooms, infinity pool, private beach. Everything you've been looking at for 2 years. The color drained from her face. This is impossible. We can't afford this. I can afford it, I corrected. Could afford it. Past tense. She stared at the deed, her hands trembling slightly. You bought me the Crystal Lake mansion? I did. It's yours now. Completely. The deed is in your name only. For a moment, genuine shock replaced her usual calculating expression. This was beyond anything she'd imagined I was capable of. How? She whispered. How did you? Harrison, this is $14 million. 14.8, actually. I got a slight discount for being patient with the seller. Sarah's shock was transforming into something else. Not gratitude. Not love. Something hungrier and more calculating. My God, she breathed, looking at me with new eyes. You've been hiding money from me. How much do you actually have? And there it was. Not thank you or I can't believe you did this or I love you. Just immediate calculation about what else she might be able to extract from me. Enough, I said simply. She was already pulling out her phone, probably to call her sister or her friends. To brag about her generous husband and her incredible new mansion. Wait, I said, reaching into my jacket. There's more. I handed her the second envelope. This one, she opened with greedy anticipation, expecting maybe another property deed or bank statements showing additional wealth. Instead, she found photographs. Her face in the window of the Ritz-Carlton downtown, kissing a man in an expensive suit. The same man walking her to a BMW I'd never seen before. The same man's hands on her body in what was clearly a hotel room. More photos. Different days, different hotels, but the same man. The same betrayal. Meet Richard Blackstone, I said conversationally. Hedge fund manager. Net worth approximately $40 million. Your boyfriend for the past 8 months. Sarah's hands shook as she flipped through the evidence of her affair. Each photo was time-stamped and dated. A comprehensive record of her double life. Harrison, she started, but I held up my hand. There's more, I said, producing a third envelope. This one contained financial records. Bank statements showing payments to Sarah from Blackstone's private accounts. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Money that had funded her designer bags, her expensive jewelry, her luxurious lifestyle. You've been his kept woman, I said, my voice still eerily calm. All those late nights at work? You've been playing house with a millionaire while coming home to complain about my lack of ambition. The tears started then, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone whose carefully constructed lies had collapsed. You don't understand, she sobbed. Richard and I, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, I replied. You've been cheating on me while spending his money and complaining about mine. The only question is how long you were planning to keep this up. She wiped her eyes, smearing her perfect makeup. I was going to tell you. Eventually. When? After you figured out how to divorce me and take half of everything? Her silence was answer enough. Well, congratulations, I said, gesturing toward the deed still clutched in her other hand. You got your mansion. Your dream house. 15 acres of lakefront paradise. Hope flickered in her eyes. Maybe she thought this was all some elaborate forgiveness gesture. But here's the thing about gifts, Sarah, I continued. Sometimes they come with strings attached. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. A real estate listing for our current house, the house we'd bought together, the house with both our names on the mortgage. I'm selling this place, I announced. Moving out today. The Crystal Lake mansion is yours, free and clear. But you'll need to cover the property taxes, maintenance, utilities, and upkeep entirely on your own. Her face went white as the implications sank in. The annual property taxes alone are $42,000, I continued. Maintenance on a property that size runs about $8,000 a month. Utilities for 23 rooms, plus the pool, plus the guest house? Another $3,000 monthly. I could see her doing the math, panic rising in her eyes. Your marketing job pays $60,000 a year before taxes, I said. After taxes, that's about $3,000 a month take home. The mansion will cost you $4,000 monthly just to keep the lights on. But Richard, she stammered. He'll help me. I laughed, the sound echoing off our kitchen walls. Richard? The married hedge fund manager with 3 kids and a wife who controls half his assets? The man who's been giving you pocket money for 8 months? I showed her my phone again. This time, it displayed a news article from that morning's financial section. Richard Blackstone under federal investigation for securities fraud, I read aloud. The FBI raided his offices yesterday morning. His assets have been frozen pending investigation. Sarah's knees buckled, and she grabbed the counter for support. Your sugar daddy is about to be someone's prison boyfriend, I said. Which means those monthly payments you've been depending on. They just stopped. The mansion deed fluttered to the floor as Sarah processed the full scope of her situation. She owned a $15 million property she couldn't afford to maintain, her affair partner was facing federal charges, and her husband was walking away. You planned this, she whispered. I planned to give my wife her dream house for our anniversary, I corrected. I had no idea she'd been cheating on me with a criminal. That part was just lucky timing. I picked up my overnight bag from beside the door. I'd packed it that morning, knowing exactly how this conversation would end. Where are you going? She asked desperately. I bought a penthouse downtown last week, I said. 2 bedrooms, city view, walking distance to my office. Much more practical than a mansion I can't afford. You can't leave me like this. Watch me. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Sarah? You might want to call a real estate agent. I'm guessing you'll need to sell the mansion pretty quickly. Though in this market, it might take a while to find a buyer. Hope you can afford the carrying costs while you wait. The last thing I heard as I closed the door was the sound of my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, sobbing over the deed to her dream house that had just become her nightmare. 3 months later, I'm sitting in my downtown penthouse, reading the morning news over coffee. The headline makes me smile, local woman forced to sell mansion weeks after receiving it as gift. Sarah had to list the Crystal Lake property at a loss, $13.5 million, almost a full million below what I'd paid. Even then, it took 2 months to find a buyer, during which she'd racked up nearly $30,000 in carrying costs she couldn't afford. She'd tried calling me dozens of times, begging me to take the house back, to help with the expenses, to somehow undo the gift that had destroyed her life. But a deed is a deed, and I'd made sure the paperwork was ironclad. The house sold last week. After agent fees, legal costs, and the money she owed in property taxes and maintenance, Sarah walked away with about $12 million. $12 million sounds like a lot, until you remember that she'd also racked up significant debt trying to maintain a lifestyle she couldn't afford, and her boyfriend's legal troubles had made her a person of interest in the federal investigation. I heard through mutual friends that she'd had to hire a criminal defense attorney. Those don't come cheap. Richard Blackstone was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for securities fraud. His wife divorced him and took half of whatever assets weren't seized by the government. Sarah, as his known associate, had her financial records scrutinized by federal investigators looking for evidence of money laundering. She wasn't charged with anything, but the legal fees consumed most of her remaining money from the house sale. Last I heard, she was living in a studio apartment across town, working at a different marketing firm for less money than her previous job. The designer bags and expensive jewelry had been sold to pay her debts. As for me? My architectural firm just landed the contract to design the new performing arts center downtown. The project fee alone will net me more than I spent on Sarah's mansion. I've started dating again, a lovely woman named Claire who's a professor at the university. She drives a 10-year-old Honda and thinks my penthouse is unnecessarily fancy. When I took her to dinner at that little Italian place Sarah used to mock, Claire said it was the most romantic restaurant she'd ever seen. We've been together 6 months now, and she still doesn't know exactly how much money I have. Not because I'm hiding it, but because she's never asked. She seems to love me for who I am, not what I can buy her. What a refreshing change. Sarah taught me an important lesson. Sometimes the most generous gift you can give someone is exactly what they think they want. Because getting everything you wished for has a way of revealing exactly who you really are. And sometimes, that revelation is the most devastating consequence of all. My wife laughed at my simple envelope, expecting another disappointment from her unambitious husband. Instead, she got her dream mansion and lost everything else that mattered. Including me. The twist reveals that Harrison didn't just give Sarah the mansion out of love. He knew about her affair and her sugar daddy's criminal activities. By giving her the unaffordable dream house right before her boyfriend's arrest, he trapped her in a financial nightmare that destroyed her life while appearing completely generous.